A bill that would extend a financial lifeline to some newly laid off miners on the Iron Range passed through a committee at the Minnesota State Capitol today. Rep. Spencer Igoe's bill would extend unemployment benefits to the 45 Hibbing taconite workers who lost their jobs up at the beginning of this month. That's after last spring Cleveland Cliffs laid off 600 employees at both Hibtac and its Minorca mine in Virginia. There is still no word on when those mines might come back online. During a committee hearing this morning, a United Steelworkers Union leader and Hibbing's mayor testified about how important these benefits would be.
What these extensions do is, bridge the gap before people in the Iron Range have to sell their houses, move, leave the state.
When the mining industry struggles, every Iron Range community feels it.
If approved by the legislature and signed by the governor, the recently laid off miners would see extended unemployment benefits through most of March 2027. The UI benefits for miners laid off last year run out in June. Well, in an earnings call last week, Cliffs expressed optimism about the domestic steel industry turning around this year, but did not comment on plans for either of their Iron Range mines. As we've previously reported, Hibtac's iron ore supply is dwindling. Both men who testified today also spoke about how important they feel it is to diversify the range's mining industry, including when it comes to helium and copper nickel.